Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Futurum Tech Webcast interview series. This is part of my Women in Tech series, and I'm super excited today to interview my friend Allyson Kapin. And, when I tell you about Allyson, it's like there's the list of what she has done is so long, it's almost easier to say, what she hasn't done, which is pretty much nothing. But anyway, she's been named one of the most influential women in tech by Fast Company. She's been named a tech titan by the Washingtonian. She's been named one of the top 30 women entrepreneurs to follow on Twitter by Forbes, which I think actually I'm on that list too. And she's been recognized for her roles, her leadership roles in technology and social media and things related to the nonprofit space and social change and social justice. I mean, she's just accomplished so much. She never ceases to amaze me. And before I quit singing her praises, I'll tell you, she's also written a best-selling book, Social Change Anytime, Everywhere, which is an action-oriented guide that shows nonprofits how to build and mobilize their communities through multifaceted campaigns and essentially helping them learn how to integrate what they're doing offline with what they're doing online, which has been a lot of my work over the course of the last decade and working with companies who need to digitally transform. Allyson's also the founder of Women Who Tech, and she launched one of the largest global platforms called the Women Startup Challenge in partnership with Craig Newmark, the founder of Craigslist. So Allyson, welcome. That's like introducing you is so hard because there's nothing you haven't done. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talking with you today.
I'm excited to have you. And, you're one of my friends that I see on the internet all the time and that I talk with all the time and that I always pay attention to. But you and I don't get a chance to look each other in the eye very often. We certainly don't get a chance to see each other in person very often. So it's really awesome. So tell me a little bit. Let's start with Women Who Tech and tell us, about Women Who Tech and what your goals are with that organization. And just kind of let us get a little more familiar with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started Women Who Tech about 10 years ago now, and it really focused on championing women in technology. And at the time when we launched 10 years ago, we also wanted to shine a light on the lack of diversity at tech conferences. And so we developed many campaigns and targeted many conference organizers to put pressure on them to really diversify their keynote speakers and their panelists, because at the time, and it's still an issue today, right? How far have we come? Back then I would go to these tech conferences and it would just be a sea of white men on stage, as if we women in tech didn't exist. And so that was really the catalyst behind Women Who Tech. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, we took a step back and we began taking a look at other issues that have not really been addressed in the space. And we quickly realized it was the lack of funding for women-led startups. So the funding for women-led startups has hovered anywhere between like 2.4% and 2.8%. We keep moving up and down by decimal points, was just like the biggest joke. And it's incredibly frustrating because VCs are in this industry to make money on startups who have disruptive technology, who are really developing these game-changing products to solve some of the biggest problems. And they're leaving out an entire gender and also many people of color in solving those problems. And so that's where we came in with our Women's Startup Challenge program to really showcase and put direct investment into women-led startups.
I might add that, we see this dearth of diversity in spite of the fact that we know that there are volumes of research that exist that speak to the fact that women-led organizations and women-led campaigns and diversity, all of these things lead to success in the startup world. And yet here we are, and I will also tell you, one of the reasons I'm doing this Women in Tech interview series with Futurum is because, like you, I'm an owner of a technology company, of an analyst and research firm. And you know what? I still have to elbow my way to the table. I have to elbow my way into conversations. I have to wave flags in front of clients and say, hey, wouldn't it be nice to do that campaign with a woman?
Yeah.
or to have a woman's point of view. And so it is, and like you, I have been the lone woman on a stage with, the token woman, if you
Yes.
will, and, or given a presentation at a major tech conference about women in some fashion and looked out and the entire audience is filled with women who don't really need this message. We know what's going on. So anyway, I live, you and I walk in the same shoes in the same path. So I very much understand it. And I have been very honored to have been a part of your startup challenge and to have been able to judge some of the amazing people who have participated in that. And so I thank you so much for including me in that. It's just really been,
Yeah.
I've been able to mentor some of these people. So it's been really terrific and I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for
So
being a part of it and such a great supporter.
absolutely, absolutely. We're all pushing that same rock up the hill. We just keep pushing.
That's right.
So, one of the things that inspired me to reach out to you to have a conversation today was because, as you know, you just recently released your State of Women in Tech and Startups report, and this is a report that you've done more than once.
Mhm.
And I know that you did some extensive research, and I'm really interested in hearing more about this. So, tell me a little bit about what your goal was in the beginning to even do this survey.
Sure. So we launched the survey first in 2017, just as the Me Too movement was really getting much more into the public eye. And it was also the same time around that Susan Fowler came out, really documenting harassment that she faced working at Uber. And we had been hearing from women through our women's startup challenges over the years just how much harassment that they had faced going into fundraising, right? So not only do they have like all of the biases and challenges of raising money that men don't, but we were also hearing about the severe sexual harassment that they were facing. And we realized that there was really no hard data on it. So we went out to our community and we surveyed nearly 1,000 founders and people working in tech. And we also surveyed both women and men because we wanted to be able to compare, was it just women that were facing this versus men? And what did that percentage look like? Instead of us making this assumption, we wanted to get some hard analytics. So we learned some really devastating data that 44% of women founders said that they had been harassed compared to about like 10% of men. So huge disconnect. And then we surveyed it again, and we also added a few more questions this time over the last few months. And the numbers, they have not changed, despite the Me Too movement that got so much publicity, where so many women came forward. We heard the biggest tech companies make commitments that they were going to really put policies in place and enforce those policies. And on the investor side, we also heard a lot of diversity pledges that they were going to really pledge to diversify their portfolio companies, that they were also going to put practices in place at their firms around anti-harassment. And guess what? 3 years later, it's the same exact statistic. It has not moved at all. 44% of women founders said that they have been harassed. 65% of LGBTQ founders say that they've also experienced harassment. 47% of women of color have experienced harassment. And this harassment is not something that just happened 4 years ago or 5 years ago. 43% said it happened in the last 12 months. So this is a very clear problem that the industry has had for many years, and it has not gotten any better.
Yeah, this makes me sad. It makes me sad. There's my dog. It makes me sad. It makes me mad. And I feel like, as I said, elbowing my way to the table is sometimes the way I describe the life that it is that I live. But when it comes to founders, when it comes to funding, when it comes to, I mean, this is, I have a business vision that I've been able to bring to light and bring to fruition and build, and these are people who are trying to get to that point, who have viable, disruptive, innovative technology, ideas, plans, proof of concept, all kinds of things like that. And yet here's this major roadblock that's getting in the way. So it's really very frustrating. And it's also very frustrating to see, the little impact that huge public awareness has had, and in
Yeah,
terms of the Me Too movement, and but in all candor, I think that we see the same thing as it relates to diversity and Black Lives Matter, and it's I
absolutely.
think we see investment funds and we see companies rushing to embrace a party line and to kind of capture the headlines at that particular point in time about, oh, look what we're doing,
Mhm.
and the reality, then the execution of that. So I don't really know what you do then, but um
Yeah, we call it ally theater, right?
yeah,
When these movements happen and they're very public online and they're written about in, from the New York Times down to TechCrunch.
right,
This is what happens. You see an outpour of very public support. You'll even see huge advertising campaigns. Like
right,
we saw that during Black Lives Matter. And yet many Black women founders who are going out and trying to raise funding right now and going to those same VCs and firms that have publicly shared their newfound support for Black founders, they're not raising money. And
right.
so it's just ally theater, and it's, it's BS.
It's frustrating. It's
It is.
frustrating. What came out of this? What came out of this report that surprised you the most, other than the fact that things haven't changed?
I mean, some of the things that came out that was really surprising was the a couple of things that actually increased since Me Too, right? You don't expect when you have a movement
Worse.
for things to get worse. So we learned that 32% of women founders were groped. I mean, that is so shocking and vile. That went up 7%. 24% of women were sent graphic photos. That went up 14% from our last study. And it's just, in many ways, it's like shocking, but
Right.
then in some ways, it's like it's not surprising, right? Because people in positions of power feel that they can get away with this stuff and
Right.
that they're not going to face repercussions because, let's face it, what repercussions have they been facing over the years? So a VC got publicly shamed, and then they hid, they kind of kept a low profile for a couple of years, and now they're back, like raising their next VC fund, and everybody's forgotten about it, and they're doing fine.
It's fun.
There's no repercussions.
It's really interesting. I know, there have been people that we know in our industry who have been accused and of things that have been somewhat terrible, and those claims have been validated, and and these individuals have admitted their wrongdoing and everything else,
Mhm.
and it amazes me when I see, and I don't feel like, I don't want somebody, life to be over or anything else. But I just feel like sometimes, like, are you serious? Like, it's like
Right.
what you did never even happened. And by the way, this was 3 years ago.
Right. Mhm.
It's so frustrating to me. And I just feel like, if you or I had perpetrated some of the things that some of these people are accused of, our careers would be ruined. I mean, I think it's really safe to say our careers would be ruined and we would be forever that woman who did that, or
That's
who,
right.
it wouldn't even be accused of, it wouldn't matter. And so I feel like the disparity there is very troubling to me. Although, again, indicative of our society. So, you know,
Exactly.
what's the path forward, Allison?
The
What's
path
the path
forward.
what's the path forward?
So a couple of things. On the investor side, I think it's going to take, honestly, a new generation of investors coming in and with a very different set of values and starting to change the industry based on those values. And I think it's slowly starting to happen. We're seeing a lot of new women-led, diverse-led fund managers come into this space. I've started a new fund myself with Kate Brodick of Women 2.0 called the W Fund. And we have a very different set of values than your typical huge Silicon Valley firm, right? So, and we're starting to see more of these funds emerge. And I think that that is going to start to change the game. But it's going to take time because emerging funds are working with less capital than the biggest investors. And
Right.
so that it'll take time for that space to really evolve. And, we're putting our stake in the ground. And then on the tech side of like big companies, that's a tough question because they have had several years to try and get things right. We have seen some of the biggest companies when employees do rise up. We have seen the companies retaliate and fire some of these employees a few months later. They claim that it wasn't related to them, protesting and speaking out. But it's hard. Um, it's hard to really stomach that when you know that these people have been with the company for many years. Oh, and just suddenly and coincidentally, they spoke out in a very public way and then were fired 2 months later for something else. Like that just doesn't add up.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, we are seeing a new generation of people in their 20s who are coming into companies and demanding a change that they will not accept working in toxic cultures. And we are seeing them stage these walkouts. They're happening like at smaller companies right now, but I think that it sends a message to some of the bigger tech companies out there that this generation of employees who are in their early 20s, they demand a very different culture. And if you don't give it to them, they will walk out and they will find another job. And I am like so psyched for this generation because like we need that power, right? And I think they're going to do it and they're going to make change and they're going to start companies and it's going to be based on their values. And that's how I think we begin to change the culture.
Yeah, I'm the parent of 14-year-old twin girls, and I'm also the parent of two older daughters, and so I'm constantly beating the drum. I'm beating the drum with them in terms of being empowered and using their voices and not settling and trying to explain to them how what it was like when I was growing up and how
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I was explaining to, I'm having an issue with my kids' school, which is a new school, and I don't love the way they're teaching this particular teacher is teaching math because what I'm hearing is that, or what I'm seeing is that she's handing a worksheet out and she's pointing the kids to a video. And so they're sort of like do it yourself mathing, right? And, I just made that term up, mathing. But I'm a math and science geek. I've spent the last 9 years developing and fostering a passion for mathematics and science in my children. And now that they're involved in learning and they're advanced math students, they're incredibly smart and they're not flourishing in this way of learning. And so I'm asking the school, like, is this how we're teaching math?
Right.
It doesn't really make sense to me. But anyway, I think that when I see whether it's social change, whether I see how these kids, boys and girls, treat one another and regard one another and what they're willing to settle for, I think that's important. But I will also admit that I'm constantly dragging my kids. I recently watched Good Girls Revolt on Netflix. I think it's Netflix. It might be Amazon, which is a story about young women journalists in the 70s. And
Mm-hmm.
at that particular point in time, and this is a true story, fictionalized, but it's a group of women who were very smart researchers, writers, and they were basically doing the work of the men, and
Right.
they were not allowed to have bylines. They were not allowed to have any credit for any of the work that they did, but yet they were doing all the work. And so it's a story of how they fought against that. And that was in the 70s. I mean,
That's
that
crazy.
wasn't that long ago.
Right.
So,
That's right.
but I feel like it's critically important for me to teach my children that, know that this happened, and know that, a very short period of time ago, women were literally
Right.
hamstrung in every way possible. And we still have many ways to go. But, I think it is initiatives like this research that you have embarked upon. And I know that you have allies from, Craig Newmark and all the great work that he's done supporting female founders and women in tech. And I think that's great. Are there any, are there any nods that you can give us to great partners, great people who you see, companies you see, investors you see that are actually doing great as it relates to this? And I'm totally blindsiding
Yeah,
you.
no, that's okay. So there are definitely allies in the space, and Craig is absolutely one of them. He has been with us from day one since we launched the Startup Challenge, and we are forever grateful. He was also a big supporter of this data and making sure that we had the resources to get it out there. So yeah, I mean, there are amazing folks at they're women, of course. BBG Ventures is a fantastic investment firm that is probably one of the first out there who, a few years ago, before also this trend of like, yes, let's be an ally and invest in women-led startups. They were one of the first to raise a fund that focused on women-led startups, and they really began to carve out this niche, and then also take a very big stand, very publicly, of how this is not about altruism. This is not about like doing the right thing. This is, if you want to make money, you are going to invest in women-led startups, and you are going to diversify your portfolios. And so they've been very, very vocal on that. So kudos to them for kind of, showing the VC world, and some very powerful women, Susan Line and Nisha are behind it, of opening up investors' eyes. Um, I also would give a shout out to, there's Jason Leader, who heads up VC partnerships at Google, has also been one of like our biggest allies
Mhm.
in not only just partnering with us to showcase these women founders, but also just doing the work of like helping these women founders. How did they access more capital? How could they be leveraging more partnerships, diving into their decks, like in his personal free time, not as part of his job. And so I think he's been a phenomenal ally. He's also part of our W Fund. So those are just like a couple of people that I've had the privilege to know and have seen true allyship, or really um, in a very important niche within VC and expanding it.
Mhm. And as you were talking, it occurred to me, one of the things that I think is important is women helping other women. And,
Mhm.
whether it's mentorship, whether it's participating in a fund, whether it's, successful women who are able to reach down and extend that hand. I think that's really important. But I think, given your examples here, it's so critically important to have men be a part of the equation.
Yeah.
Can we do it by ourselves? Yes. Can we do it quicker, more effectively, better when we have male allies and male corporate allies? I think that male corporate leaders is what I mean. I think that it really is where you shorten the time to success. And I think it makes a big difference.
I
So
agree. I mean, we can't do this alone.
no,
Like, we really can't. I mean, it takes like, and I don't think it's the right way to do it. I don't think like these silos is
right,
how we get business done, right?
right,
That, like, the women are over here, the men are over here. I mean, it's a little ironic that I have something called Women Who Tech and the Women Startup Challenge and the W Fund,
right.
it's only we only have it right now because we need to,
Right.
shine a light on this issue and deploy funding to startups that are completely underestimated and underrepresented in VC. And
Mhm.
then once we can begin to equalize that, right, within the ecosystem, then we don't have to have something like that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so that's the goal.
That's the goal. Yeah. That's the goal, that we don't need it.
Right? Exactly.
Well, listen, Allyson, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I always love when, I have the opportunity to listen to what it is you have to say, and the great information that you have to share. And for people listening today, I will include in the show notes, I will include a link to Allyson's report, The State of Women in Tech and Startups. And I encourage you to take a look at it. And if you are watching or listening and you're part of an organization and you want to get involved with Women Who Tech and support this organization, I encourage you to do that. And the way that we affect change is, many hands make short work, or whatever that adage is. I don't know, but if you're listening and you want to help, we'd love to have you. I know Allyson would love to have you. On behalf of every woman in tech everywhere, we would love to have you. So I'll close with that. And Allyson, thank you so much for joining me. And, I look forward to what's next around the corner from you. And I'm sure it'll be something big.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.